If you're an attorney in the pursuit of a successful law practice, fulfilling career, and the life of your dreams, this podcast has it all. Behind the Bench gives you great tools to overcome the unique challenges you face every day as a law firm owner. Welcome to Behind the Bench podcast with your host, Josh Konigsberg, author, partner, and co-founder of Law Firm Marketing Pros and lifelong entrepreneur.
Josh Konigsberg here, back with another exciting episode of Behind the Bench podcast for lawyers. Super excited about my guest today, attorney Rob LaBre from LaBre Law Office in Cass County, Michigan. I'm proud to say that Rob and I have become friends over the last couple of years since we started working together, and super excited to have you on. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.
And before we jump in, I just want to also thank you for your service in the military. I know that you told me your story that you came out of high school and joined the Marines. Can you say a little bit about that, your service?
Sure. So when I left high school, I was nowhere near prepared going for college. I was rebellious, if you'd like to say. And so, I made the decision I was leaving home. And so I joined the Marine Corps. I enlisted. I served a year and a half with the infantry, with 3-2 out in Camp Lejeune. And when we came back from Okinawa, I took the INDOC test for 2nd Recon Battalion and joined them. And I spent my last 2.5 years with 2nd Recon.
Great. I love it. And again, thank you so much for your service. So, so you come out of the Marines and you decide to go to law school, right? And I saw that you went to college, obviously, and then law school, and you graduated magna cum laude?
I graduated magna cum laude from Western with high honors from Lee Honors College. And then I transitioned over to law school and graduated well from MSU Law as well.
So much for being rebellious, right?
You turned it around.
Marines will tend to do that, right? So your father had started the law firm, and so you come out of school, you pass the bar, and you join your father. What was really the inspiration? And let's talk about any challenges that you may have faced coming in working with your father.
So the reason why I went to become a lawyer was inspired by my father. And working in the family law firm, my dad's always been my best friend. I mean, him and I are very, very close, two peas in the pod. An example of that might be, he was the best man at my wedding.
Wow.
We took annual vacations together to go fishing and just get away. Like him and I have always been close. As a rare experience, I've watched other father-son lawyer teams, and they don't always work out. But they always have worked out with my father and I. Like any other firm, we've had those very difficult conversations about the finances or about what's going on with certain situations within the law firm. But because him and I are such close friends, and because we have a lot of trust with one another, we've always been able to work through it without having any, the whole situation falling apart. And my father's always given me a lot of leeway to be the lawyer that I want to be. He doesn't set an expectation that I do it his way. We have a lot of respect for one another in that regard. And so I've always been able to develop as a lawyer my own way while still being guided by him, if you will, as I went through some of the new experiences that new attorneys have such difficulty with as they're coming up through the ranks. And I wanted to go and practice with my dad as compared to work with somebody else because I knew I would have that independence. I knew I eventually would take over the firm on my own. And I would be my own boss eventually. And that is super important for me. The rebelliousness isn't completely gone, Josh. I've got to think my own way. I've got to do my cases my own way. And that's something that I have in my setting that I can do that I probably wouldn't be given the freedom to in, say, a bigger law firm. I get to call my own shots. I get to advise my clients. This is the outcome that I think is going to occur. And I dictate the terms of how I'm going to handle that. And that independence, that freedom is absolutely priceless. That's why I became my own lawyer, my own law firm. My dad sold it to me in 2015, and that's when I took it over. I've had it for the last 8 years, and I knew I would eventually come to that point, and that's why I went this direction.
Well, that's a wonderful story and a blessing that you have that type of relationship. You're very fortunate, and cherish it, man. That's good stuff.
We try to spend as much time as possible.
So, Rob, tell our audience what types of law that you practice at the LaBre Law Office.
Sure. So we're litigation-based, and we're rural, so it's very diverse. I practice in family, criminal, probate, and it's generally in estate litigation or estate administration, and real estate disputes. And it's, I also get into torts a bit with those real estate disputes because they're crossing each other's boundary line and then getting themselves into fights. And so you play with the torts at the same time.
Love it. Thank you. So, Rob, we've been working together now for about 3.5 years. Tell everybody where you were when we started with you and what's happened. You don't have to say numbers, but what's happened over that 3.5-year period that's had impact on your practice and your life.
So when I started with you, it was right before we got COVID. It was the beginning of 2020. I want to say January or February. And we started off with your pay-per-click. I think I was making, that year would have been completely different without COVID. But the year before, I had made 500. It was my first year at 500. And I think we were trying to traject up to go up to the next level. And since I joined up with you folks, I'm tracking 1.3 million this year.
That's great. And so was there one thing that we did, or was it the combination of services? Because you've added as you've grown.
Yeah.
You've enhanced services with us that's helped you achieve that kind of lift. So can you describe that for everybody?
So you got a lot of services you provide. So when we first started, it was all about just the pay-per-click. And I was going to a different vendor for the website. I was going to a different vendor for direct mailers. And that was my marketing plan for that year. And then we lifted to 700. And then the next year we lifted to 1.1. And at that point, we could no longer have this segmented. And we went all in with you at LFMP. And it's been the social media, the newsletters, the pay-per-click, the SEOs, the website, the reviews. All of this is ultimately speaking, I'll use your term, the halo effect, because the newsletters, right? That's the reminders, all of your prior clients that you still exist and they shouldn't forget about you. Even if they don't open it, they see you in the inbox. But we have a surprisingly, this is the rural, it is the difference, right? Because we have a surprisingly high open click rate. The SEO for the organic, the pay-per-click, bring new clients, the reviews, so important. And of course the pay-per-click. All of this is creating the upward trajectory where we're shooting for 1.7 the following year.
So the beautiful thing is it's not crazy meteoric growth, meaning it's manageable for you as the law firm owner, because if you go from 500,000 to 5 million in a matter of 2 years, the wheels fall off, right? So to me, it looks like a manageable, controlled growth.
For me, and I'll say for me, like I know those lawyers out there that have gone from like 700, 1.4. Just huge growth. And if they sharpen their, you ever hear that story with Abraham Lincoln? Give me 4 hours to get something accomplished. I'll spend the first 3 sharpening my axe. If they've sharpened their axe well enough and they're not going insane and they were able to accomplish that, good for them. High praise. That's just never, I haven't been able to see that in my own trajectory of growth. Perhaps at one point I will be that good at growing the law firm, but that just hasn't been me. And I accept that. And I know that in time I am going to reach my ultimate financial goal, which at this point is 4 million. And I know that, I feel comfortable with the people that I work with, that we're going to get there. It's just a question of when, not if.
Can you share some strategies for effective scaling the law firm while consistently maintaining the quality level of services that you have?
So for effectively scaling the law firm, I would say you got to know your numbers. And you got to associate yourself with quality vendors that are going to help you grow, that know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's really a team effort. We may think of them as vendors and they're not part of the firm, but vendors really do become part of the firm. Like LFMP really is, in my book, part of the firm. We meet all the time, and those meetings are crucial to understanding how to scale up. So knowing your numbers, so, the broad scale, how many calls do I need to get, how many clients I'm ultimately going to get to reach my financial goal that I set for myself at the beginning of the year. That's how you're going to scale. And you can't do that effectively if you're speaking to vendors that don't know what they're doing and they're not setting up the necessary support, both with staffing and technology, and with new techniques on marketing, and new techniques on how to manage your firm. If you're not associating with those people, you're not going to grow. You're going to stay stuck in your own mind, and you're going to hit a ceiling where you just don't know where to go from there.
So really you're describing a partnerships that's designed for growth, scale and growth is what you just described to me.
Educate yourself, right? Like have a coaching, hire a coaching firm and start educating yourself about all the things that you don't know. Because I'll tell you, when I first got the firm in 2015, I had it for about 3 years before I went to get coaching services. And I'm glad I made that investment in myself to get coaching services, because it's really opened my eyes of what I didn't know. Doing your own books, not a good idea. Hire a bookkeeper, right? Do you need a paralegal? Well, that depends on how much caseload you've got and do you know what your average case value, and all of these things that before you start on the path of growing, before you actually hire people to assist in teaching you, you had no clue. So yeah, absolutely educate yourself.
Yeah. So we made a similar strategic decision about 4 years ago to join a coaching group, and it's been phenomenal. And just to have the brain power, access to the brain power that we have of best practices in the dynamic environment of digital, it's been just a blessing. And again, nobody knows everything about everything, right? So,
and you're surrounding yourself with peers that are having the same problem. And maybe, if you're really lucky, there'll be somebody that has already gone through it when you're at conferences and so forth.
That's right.
You'd be like, I am dealing with, for me, like earlier this year, call volume was such a problem. The call answering service and interfacing between the firm and the call answering service and handling hundreds and hundreds of calls. Having somebody that you can talk to that's been through it at those conferences is so important, because look, this was a strategy that I used. See if it works for you.
Good stuff, man. So this actually leads right into building a strong team. How do you go about, and you and I have discussed this, how do you go about cultivating a team of talented attorneys and support staff?
So for me, it's a lot different than, say, somebody in an urban area. Like if you're in a big city, Chicago around me, Detroit, or wherever, Miami, New York, it's a lot different in finding talent than it is for me. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm very rural where I'm at. And so I can't just jump on Indeed or ZipRecruiter or one of these other online services and ask for lawyers to submit their resume and expect to have very good results. No, they have to literally move out here if I want them in-house. And that's not something that happens very well. And I generally want my attorneys in-house as compared to remote as I'm scaling up, because rural folks want to see you. They don't want to have you through a screen if at all possible. So I've had to go the route of recruiting and pay that price and factor that into my strategic growth. And it's not something I necessarily like, given the price tag that comes with it, but it's something that I understand comes with the price of business. And I'll tell you, I've had really good success using recruiters. They do a really good job of filtering out personalities that they don't think would mesh with mine, because I like with you and I interface with them, and they know who I am, and they know my expectations, and they know what I'm looking for. And so that's what I've done to assist my firm in growing in a very highly competitive market. It's highly competitive for jobs, and you have to jump almost as soon as that resume hits that these people are on the market.
Yeah. So are there certain qualities that you look for in hiring a new lawyer? And the answer for this can be beneficial as the podcast gets more exposure. So someone who is researching, who's just out of law school, starting to listen to the podcast and learn more, could come across this. So what qualities do you look for?
So, I don't mean to be too vague here, but, intelligence. Somebody out of law school, their experience would be a factor. Am I seeing a person with courage? Because I'm in court. This law firm litigates. We don't do estate planning. My dad does estate planning, but he's mostly retired. But the attorneys that I'm hiring, they're in court, criminal, real estate, family, probate issues. You're dealing with people with a lot of problems, and you have to have courage in standing up for your client and take the right position. I'm looking for honesty. Am I dealing with somebody that's going to be honest and ethical, not only with me as their employer, but with their client, in putting the client first, with opposing counsel, and with the judge or whoever the fact finder is. I'm looking for these. You can't. It's always kind of a reading tea leaves when you're recruiting, right? Like, is this the type of person that's going to do that? You do the best you can as the employer to try to figure out if this person appears to have those types of standards. I do a lot of reference checking. What are the people that they're telling me are the best people that they can come to, that, tell them about them. I really dig in there, and I take that time to have 30 minutes worth of, is what they're telling me and showing me accurate? I want to see the personality that's going to do the hard work. I've seen, I've had in my firm and had to quickly pass them off, the type of personality that wants to pass the buck, that wants to say, not my job. That's for somebody else. Or, I was never told that, when it was a very common sense, blatant issue that if you would have actually taken 10 more seconds to look at it and taken 20 more seconds after that to think about it, it would have never become a problem to begin with. If you're closed-minded and just expect to be somebody working in McDonald's, the equivalent of making McDonald's hamburgers, don't come and be a lawyer. Don't work in a law firm is my approach. And I fired people on those grounds. So I'm looking for that hard worker that actually likes doing the type of work that they're applying for.
So one word, I used to tell my children this as they got older and would start going out to parties and whatnot, and it's one word: think. Right? Think.
When I was, I'll go off on a tangent here. When I was, I want to say it was after my senior year, I worked at Diamond Lake Marina. And Diamond Lake in Cassopolis is where all the people from Illinois have their vacation houses. And more importantly, the fathers and mothers brought their daughters to their vacation houses during their vacation. And so to me, this was almost a vacation before I went to the Marine Corps because I was on the lake all the time. But I would say that I wasn't exactly paying that much attention to the work in front of me. And Jay, who was my boss, would always say, "God damn it, Bobby, use your common sense." Never, like, it still rings in my head, and I can still hear his voice when I'm talking to an employee that just screws something up to no end. It's common sense. Like, these are the intangibles that you need to bring to us. This is why I am willing to pay you more than somebody else to do this job.
Yep. That's a great story. I love it. So to kind of wrap this up, let's talk about the culture, the firm's culture that you've developed. And when I say wrap it up, just this section. So for us, corporate culture is really important. Almost all of the members of my leadership team talk about how wonderful the culture is in the work environment we've created at Law Firm Marketing Pro. So let's talk about it for LaBre Law Office.
So for a culture, I'm looking for people to collaborate, to help one another out, to create a positive atmosphere. During the day, it's not uncommon for us just to go over cases that we just dealt with, or we will talk about experiences that we had that we can use to improve the situation in the future. Stopping and answering questions as they come along. Excuse me. Not yelling at one another, no name calling, no gossip. I mean, these are all very important aspects. I had a situation where my paralegal and my young attorney got into a shouting match at the firm, and we got a small office. And one of the other attorneys, I wasn't there that day, I had to tell them to stop, and they did, right? But it gets back to me.
Sure.
And I just brought them both in, and I'm talking to the attorney, and it's like little kids, right? Well, she started it. And you look at them and you're like, do you think that I care? Okay. You're a licensed, barred attorney. I get your frustration with the lack of work product or, the problem with the work that was there. But guess what? If she starts it in with you, it's your job to say, we're going to talk about this later and move on, because we're not going to elevate to that level.
There you go.
And so both of them get the write-up. And guess what? That told the rest of the culture in the rest of the firm. I don't care who did it. One of you are going to be the adult, because I'm not going to have both of you creating this bad atmosphere that my clients, the firm's clients, and other employees can hear. We're just not tolerating that, period. And it just stopped.
That's right. Good stuff. So let's talk about the clients and client relationship management. Do you have any tips that you can share? Like, what are your top tips in fostering strong client relationships and also delivering exceptional client service?
Sure. The initial consult with the attorney is, to me, that is the most important part of the case. It's where I do my background questions. I have a script that I go through so that I know their case. Like, I've been doing my practice areas for so long. My script is so well written that by the time I get done understanding their facts, I can already pretty much size up who I'm dealing with and what they want. But at the end, I also ask them, what's keeping you up at night about this case? And the answers will surprise you on that, because the answers you think you're going to hear based upon their responses to the background don't always reflect that. I had one case where it was like a $3 million estate. And my client was the female, and the guy was the moneymaker. She wanted divorced fast. That was her big, that was what's keeping her up at night. And she was willing to make sacrifices to make that happen. And we had to have long discussions about what that meant and the consequences of having that. Understanding, what's keeping them up at night. That's huge in understanding what's what you're dealing with throughout the rest of the case and why there's
Great question.
you know,
Great question.
but then the legal goals, right? The legal goals, and then I explain to them the likelihood of achieving their legal goals.
So it's expectation management at the initial consult.
Right. Like, I don't leave it open-ended. I don't believe in leaving things open-ended. Like, I try to be I'll leave it open-ended, but I'll be direct about it. Like, I can't answer this. I don't know. If you want an answer to that question, I'm going to have to pay for discovery over here.
Right.
That may mean a deposition or a phone interview or something. And so I can't answer that question because you don't know the answer, or I don't trust the answer that you gave me because it depends on what another person will say. And so we're going to have to invest to find out the answers to these. But I bring it down as tight as I can to say, you're here. Maybe I can't bring you over here, which is where you want, but I can bring you here. Do you agree that this is where, if I get you here, you'll be happy with my services? And, I've never had the situation where they say no. And then I give them the cost. I tell them how long it's going to take to get us there, generally speaking. And they want to know. They want to know, how much am I paying? What am I going to get? And how long do I have to wait until I get there?
Yeah. And it's a scary proposition. In some cases, they've never even spoken to an attorney before, right? So they're nervous. They're not sure what to expect. So that's really important. Yeah, go ahead. We're going to
rural area. I listen to my colleagues at these conferences, and they're like, "Yeah, $100,000 case, divorce." I'm like, "Geez, what kind of client do you have?" For me, my bread and butter is the $4,000 case. They put that down, and it is speed track them through the process in about 3 to 6 months. We do our own internal discovery. I take all the information, and having the relationships with the other attorneys is what counts so much. I mean, the big city, I don't have much experience with big city lawyering, but my understanding is it's very cutthroat. Where I'm at, we're way too small. We're way too small for that type of behavior to do you a service. You're going to find, if you start acting that way out in any case, you're going to get that reputation, and then people will stop working with you.
Yeah. Super important.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about marketing and branding for your law firm. So what marketing approaches have you found to be the most effective in promoting the firm and the services and the different services?
So, this is a multifaceted question. Of course, online marketing is paramount. This is the premier way of how I communicate and obtain clients. And of all the methods that are used, it's pay-per-click that you folks are so good, that you guys are really good at. I mean, it's fantastic what you guys do. But the pay-per-click is what assists us in being able to scale the most. Like, if I'm starting off with, as you know, we've had this conversation, Josh, I'm trying to make X. How much do I need to spend at your firm to make X? And we go through it. We need this many calls to get this many. We need this many clicks to generate this many calls, to generate this many consults, to generate this many closings. So pay-per-click, of course, is of paramount importance. Do I know anything about pay-per-click? Hell no. That's why I hire you. You do your thing. Reviews online. I can't tell you, how important reviews are online. I don't think that people, even when they're referring your service, depend upon the friend that referred you. Friend starts off with, "Oh, I've got a problem." Another friend, do you have a lawyer you can recommend? "Oh yeah, check out LaBre Law Office. Talk to Rob," or whatever. They're not ending their research with whatever their friend told them. They're jumping on their phone and they're looking at those reviews. And, that's part of what you have to accept. Furthermore, if you're not actively working to get your positive reviews, then you're just going to get sunk with negative reviews at some point, because no matter what you do, you're always going to run into a disgruntled client. And I don't care how good a job you did for them. They are just of that personality. You took that money, and it doesn't matter if you were a miracle worker. It just was never going to be good enough. And there you are with a 1-star. So actively working on those online reviews, that's huge for my online presence. The website. I mean, we've got so many people doing form fills now on the website, and that's another source that we didn't have before building out the website. Social media, that's been a big piece. Sharing with people the online reviews and getting the word out there. Making posts about the law. I mean, if for no other reason, they don't read it, but at least you reminded them of you, which causes them to remember if they have a person that has a problem in their life to refer to you. And then SEO, the keywords and the search and making sure that you're on top of the Google organic searches, you got to work that. And, I know I don't have time to work on SEO. I know when I was first trying to scale up, I read books about how I could improve my own SEO. And I don't know, did you see my first website that I made myself when I was first kicking off?
It was years ago, so I don't
fully time. So I actually made my own website from one of those cut and paste website creating things.
Yeah, like Wix or something like that. Yeah.
Something like that, right? And, what an atrocious thing I made, but, without it, it would have been worse.
Right.
But
I didn't know they taught graphic design in the Marine.
So I just had the office staff come around and take pictures of my dad and I in the law firm. And that's what we posted up there. It was like, whatever, just do this. And I remember I was trying to write little blogs every week. And, you do the best you can, but, you get into either A, perfectionist mode, and so it never gets done, or B, you get bogged down in the work, and so it never gets done. SEO, absolutely of vital importance, but I'm so glad I've washed my hands of it. You guys can do that. Now,
when the SEO is done right, what happens is that it lowers your customer acquisition cost because now you have a blended average of paying for clicks and free clicks. And the more of those free clicks you get that convert, the lower your customer acquisition costs.
Right. Right.
All right. So, in terms of the financial management and business growth, so what types of considerations should a lawyer be aware of when running a law firm in a growth stage? Because cash flow, and I've talked to plenty of clients that have had cash flow problems as they've grown meteorically from some of the stuff that we've done for them.
So some of the basics, I don't know if I'm going into too much grade school with it, but create a budget. Start off with your budget. If you're having cash flow problems, then you need to start looking at all of your vendors, all of your expenses, and how much you're spending per month, and what don't you need? Because I just cut 2 big expenses because I was starting to feel the pinch of cash flow, and I was like, I hired this, and I don't need it. I thought it was an experiment. Yeah, it's okay, but you know what? Do I need it? No. Cut $2,500 off my monthly budget. So just go through what you're spending your money on. Go through your credit card and see what's coming out there on a regular basis that you haven't thought about. I just did this the other day, and I saw that website that I made. They were still billing me. I was like, oh, I cut that. So create your budget, right? Professional bookkeeper, depending upon your level. I mean, if we're talking that people listening to this are going to be straight out of law school or straight off on their own as a solo practitioner, that's who I'm talking to right now. Professional bookkeeper, don't do your own books. Get rid of that. And then again, review your books every month. I mean, the basics.
So let's talk about managing the quality of your life, and because you're a family man, so you have to balance that quality of life with your family and also provide a quality level of services to your clients while we're maintaining a wonderful corporate culture.
Sure. I use a planner. Again, we're back to square one with basics here, but that is a foundational piece that has absolutely transformed my life. Before I actually went into trying to scale up my firm, I never had a planner. I never took any kind of active work to say, what does my year look like? What does my quarter look like? What does my next 2 weeks look like? What does my month look like? I never took any time to do any of that. But after I started, scaling, I was like, hey, if you're looking at this for the year, if you're looking at that for the next 5 years and where you want to be, what are the steps you're going to take? And what are your milestones? And what is your step-by-step plan you're going to take to get there? And if you don't have a planner, if you don't use a planner, I don't know how you get there and hold yourself accountable. Because whenever I blow a deadline in my planner, I don't get upset with myself, but I knew I blew a deadline and I reset.
Right.
And, hey, why didn't this get done? What came up? And let's plan around that the next time. Or was I reevaluate the goal? Like, was this something that I even should have been a priority? But you can't do that unless you're writing it down in like a journal, daily using it like a journal. And if you don't get into that habit, I don't know how you can, otherwise balance your life, because I have to schedule my wife. I have to schedule my kids.
Yeah, right. That's great advice, man. Really good advice. And so basic, but so many people just don't do it, right? I'm not sure, I know my clients do it, but just in general, so many people don't do it. So
right.
Great advice. So just switching gears a little bit, and let's talk about technology. How has the technology advancements influenced the way your law firm operates, whether that be using a CRM with client, client management tools, etc.?
So I'm going to kind of go on. I'm not going to use, I can go into the CRM. I use Lawmatics, and the CRM has definitely influenced our intake. And it certainly has assisted us in learning the numbers. How many calls did we have? So I can hold you accountable. Hey, Josh, we didn't have the calls. Tell me what's going on there. Or, hey, Josh, it blew it right out of the friggin' water. We've had way more calls than anticipated. We've had way more closings, right? So Lawmatics is what I use. I'm not trying to put a plug in for them. I'm just saying that's what I use. There's plenty of other CRMs available out there. But you got to have something, right? And it's transformed our intake so that we're able to have those reports available so that we can report it to you, and year by year, we can look at it on a scaling, are we scaling in the direction we want to scale? Or if not, what is it that we need to change? What happened where it's not going in that direction?
Right. That's right. So tracking the scale, hitting the targets, or not hitting the targets.
Right. So
go ahead.
I could go on with technology, Josh. I mean, if you want me to go into Zoom, Brad, just ban the Dropbox email, I can.
Yeah. So what are the innovative tools now that you're using? Obviously, COVID changed everything, and we know we live in a Zoom world. We're on Zoom now. We would not be able to do this without me flying you into Jupiter, Florida, which might not be a bad thing next month. Right.
Well, it's really changed, just my ability to recruit. Nobody wants to go into the office now, and I can't scale at the pace I want to scale. Like I have the caseload for another attorney and another paralegal right now. I could hire them, and it would take a whole bunch of cases off my back. But again, I'm in rural America. This isn't exciting Miami or exciting Chicago, where we get to have, whatever lifestyle they're looking for after hours. It really does come down to, I need a unique individual that wants to be here. So it's helped expand what I can recruit for, right? So if I want to, I can now use outsourced attorneys with Zoom, with Practice Panther, and with between emails and Dropbox. I can make sure that, the client's interacting with their attorney, albeit through the screen or through the phone, but here's where the client interactions happen. You can task them with their caseload through Practice Panther, and you can get the documents they need through Dropbox and the communications through email. That's been transforming to have that, especially as we've had overflow of cases where I need to hire outsourced mean, now we've got outsourced. We have companies that have a plethora of attorneys that they'll give to you for outsourced work now. What is it? A law clerk or freelance and whatnot. It's helped expand that ability to use those types of attorneys.
And so what about AI and law? Where have you investigated, researched, and where do you see that in the near future?
So this isn't as big of an issue for me at this stage of the game in rural Cass County as I'm sure it is in the bigger cities. I'm reading these articles about, attorney tasked AI with drafting a full, complete brief. And it doesn't intimidate me. I'm not really worried about attorneys being replaced, or at least not in the litigation mode. And so at least where I'm at, it hasn't really affected my thinking about how the law practice will be done.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it's going to reduce the amount of support staff you're going to need with a good paralegal that understands how to use the technology. So you might be able to get twice the work out of one paralegal.
Well, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. So what challenges do law firm owners commonly face maintaining smooth operation, and how do you overcome the difficult challenges that you face?
So smooth operations for law firm owners. You have multiple attorneys, you have multiple staff. Each has their own packet of software, from Practice Panther to their email account to their Dropbox, to even their own Zoom, right? The challenge that I initially faced was making sure I understood what cases they had and where they were at in every single one of their cases. So if I had a client complaint, I could dive right into that case, go to that particular client and address the issue, see where they're at with their documents in Dropbox, and then question the attorney if there's any accuracy to what the client is telling me, if it elevates to my level. We lost an attorney this year, having a work in progress report, knowing, and it's literally all of his cases. And I know all of his active cases. So that, this person goes, all right, here's all the people that have open court cases. And we go through every single one. And I had a meeting with all the staff and said, all right, which ones do we need motions filed to adjourn these things? Where are we at with the next steps? So that, as I influxed and divvied out the cases amongst everybody, nobody was panicking because we knew everything that we had a box around it. It wasn't like, I hope I have covered everything. It was, we covered everything. So work in progress reports, if you don't have them, you definitely need them for everybody in the firm. And that, I will say that was the biggest experience I had with maintaining smooth operations and why I had having the work in progress. And even just reviewing all the cases every week and making sure my attorneys every week are going through all of their cases. Because if I get a complaint, right, from a client that they're handling, if it elevates to me, and it's the type of complaint that's like, they didn't get the exhibits in time. That's a weekly meeting issue. And I will tag it and say, well, did you have your meeting? Why wasn't this addressed? We have another report that has all the deadlines for all their cases. That's separate from the work in progress report that has their whole entire scheduling order listed on a sheet. And for all of their cases. So it's all just chronological. So that, hey, it wasn't on your deadline sheet. Why not? That's a paralegal problem because that's the paralegal's job according to our policies and procedures. Why aren't you guys? But it's also the attorney problem. It's your job to always make sure that the paralegal is doing their job. So
to me, that's what you're describing is just a sound management sound management practices is what you're describing to me,
Yeah.
and the tools in place to help manage it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So, all right. So, what trends do you foresee in the legal industry? And again, being rural is going to be different than being in an urban area. But how are you preparing for your firm in the future?
So I'll tailor this just to my firm and my local area. And, we're right on the border between Michigan and Indiana. I've got my license to practice law in both Michigan and Indiana. And the trends that I'm seeing in my area is so many people have cross-border issues. Evidence is located in one state, the case is located in another, or they've got two cases pending in two different states. Whatever the case might be, the trending that I'm seeing is a need for everybody in our area to be able to go to a firm that can handle all of their issues in one house between two states. And so I would say how I'm preparing for that is I'm trying to scale up to a point where I can open up an office in Indiana as well, because right now my offices are in Michigan. And I'm scaling up to a point where we open up the office also in Indiana, so that people can come to our firm and know that we're in both states and able to assist with all their issues.
It's really exciting and a great strategy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's your long-term vision. It's a great vision. Do you have an exit at some point in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? What is it too soon to tell? I mean, you've had your own firm now for 8 years.
Yeah.
So,
I'm a little bit different of a bird than most of the entrepreneurs I meet. A lot of the entrepreneurs I meet don't like, at least in the legal field, they would prefer not to be practicing the actual practice area.
Yeah.
I love the game is so much fun to me. I don't, at this stage of where I'm at, I can't imagine ever fully stopping. So for me, my exit strategy is more along the lines of I have the nice, cozy 8:30 to 5 p.m. rather than the 8:30 to 7 p.m. approach. And I've got a support staff that I can always lean on, that if I want to take the time, I can just go ahead and do it and do as I please in that regard.
Quality of life, time with the family, right?
Right.
So awesome. Great stuff. So what other nuggets of wisdom can you share with our audience, if you have any?
It really comes down to if you're a solo and you're looking to scale. Man, I keep on coming back to educate yourself and surround yourself with the right people. If I'm going to say any other piece that made the biggest difference for me and our ability to scale, it was really diving in there and being willing to pay the price to hire people to help me understand what I didn't know. And being able to take that constructive criticism about what I'm doing and what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right as well, and taking that and actually executing a plan to get from point A to point B. So educate yourself, the coaching. I mean, I'm not trying to repeat it too much, but that nugget of wisdom, I just think bears repeating if people aren't doing it and they want this. That really is the piece that you have to, that's the first step of faith you got to take, is getting your coaching staff, getting the right vendors around you, the right people that know the marketing, your bookkeepers, and surrounding yourself with people that want success for you as well.
Great stuff. Well, that concludes our podcast for today. Rob LaBre from the LaBre Law Office in Cache County, Michigan. Rob, thanks so much for being my guest today. Really appreciate having you on. And signing off for now, Josh Konigsberg, Law Firm Marketing Pros, the Behind the Bench podcast. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another fabulous episode of Behind the Bench. I hope you take action on some insight and tips you learned today. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share.